Okay, perfect. Very excited to be here today. Thank you. Hello, and welcome to the session, How to Embrace the New Normal to Enhance Your Leadership, Empower Your Employees, and Boost Your Bottom Line. I'm Quendrida Whitmore, and I'm the Senior Vice President and Head of Community at WeWork, and we're one of the leading providers of flex space with 15 locations in the Boston area that I will be visiting very soon, and I'm excited to get there and maybe possibly meet some of these fabulous ladies that are joining me for this next section. I am thrilled to be joined by 3 Boston area business leaders who come from a diverse experience and backgrounds, but share a number of common bonds, including that they all are WeWork members, which we absolutely love. So I will introduce first Betty Francisco. She's the CEO and investment committee member of Boston Impact and co-founder and board co-chair of Amplify Latinx. Dipti Patel, Chief Happiness Officer, which, okay, you guys are gonna love that title. Chief Happiness Officer, which is fantastic, of iorad. And then Kathleen Nagle. I asked Kathleen before this how she pronounced her last name. I think I nailed it. She'll tell me if I didn't. Strategic Account Director at Teads. So to start, we're gonna ask each one to provide a quick overview of your company's mission. Maybe like 2 sentences of like, what is your company and like, what's the mission out there in the world today for you? So I'll start with Dipti.
Hi guys, thank you so much for having me. My name is Dipti Patel. Yes, I am the Chief Happiness Officer here at iorad. And basically iorad is an application learning platform. Our mission is to help employees learn all the applications that run their businesses. And we do it through something called the knowledge loop, capture, share, and learn. Really quickly, what does that mean in layman's term? It means you know your application, you're really good at it, and you want to share it with the rest of your team. So you create these wonderful step-by-step instructions, you give it to your team learns it, now you are all power users. And
Very
so
nice.
that is what we do, and that is our mission.
That's awesome. And what I'm finding is just when I say your title, I start smiling.
Yes.
So I don't know if that happens with everyone or not, but Betty, I'm gonna jump over to you. If you can give us a little bit about your mission.
Sure. So Boston Impact Initiative is a social impact investment fund, and it's focused on investing in entrepreneurs of color or into communities of color in Eastern Massachusetts. And the goal is to create an inclusive and equitable economy that is using and restoring the local reproductive capacity of these businesses. The ultimate mission of Boston Impact is to use financial innovation to close the racial wealth divide. Awesome. And so, yeah, it is, it's a $7 million nonprofit charitable loan fund. As of this past, I want to say, quarter, we've invested close to $6.5 million into 45 businesses. So it's a mission near and dear to my heart. It's a little bit different from traditional venture capital. It's social impact investing, and it's supporting entrepreneurs that oftentimes, have not gotten traditional access to capital.
So needed today also. It's awesome. Thank you for sharing. And then Kathleen.
Yes, hi, thanks for having me. I work for a company called Teads. It's an ad technology company that has a number of proprietary ad technology products that empower and monetize publishers and their content-based pages. So the big mission of our company is to empower these publishers, allow journalism to thrive in this country, and continue to allow them to monetize with interesting and high-impact ad experiences that also excite and engage consumers. So we have a large portion of our business that's dedicated to working with our publishers and empowering them and allowing them to keep, monetizing their content and be in existence. We say we align with the truth tellers that are in the US specifically, but we're also a global company. And then we also have a large business that I'm a part of working with brands to help them, put out their messaging on the publishers and the ad technology platform that we power. So that's what we're all about.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, ladies, for joining us. I'm really excited for this next. They're going to kill me because I am going to say 30 minutes from this point, but I know we have less than that. we're going to make sure that we end it on time. But the first question that I have that we're going to jump into is that there's just been so much change over the last year and a half, from COVID that's causing us to really look at hybrid work, to the racial justice movement, bringing in advocacy into the workplace, and many businesses looking completely different than they did just a short time ago. I always say that COVID like shoved us into the future, like almost 10 years probably. So how has your company changed? And then how have you changed your leadership style as a result of all of the changes from the last year and a half?
Who do you want to?
Anyone can jump in. Betty, you can go ahead and jump in.
Sure. Well, so I'll start with where I was last year, because I wasn't yet a Boston Impact Initiative. I started there in May of this year, a nonprofit called Compass Working Capital employees. And I'll tell you a story in that before COVID, we were grappling with how do we go towards a more flexible work environment? How do we take an in-person model, which is financial coaching, where people come to our office and our coaches are there and they're meeting in person? How do we take that and potentially do more phone coaching, video coaching? But we never envisioned that we could do that, right? Like full scale. And so we had a flexible workman and really struggled over how can this work. COVID comes. What it did, it accelerated something that was going to happen eventually, but it forced us to pushed us, right, to do it pretty much in an instant. And luckily, we're already using technologies like the phone and Zoom, and we're able to completely transition to a remote coaching model within a week or two. Like it wasn't, a big deal. However, it was a shock, right? It was a shock to everybody on, how to work differently in this environment where you're not seeing each other in person, where, things were, papers were handed to you in the office usually. Like, how do you take all that and do it in a digital environment? So I would have to say everyone adapted very, very quickly. And we even hired a record number of employees that year in a remote fashion. What I would say is that the way it changed is we had to find ways to, address COVID itself and the impacts of COVID and the need to do a lot of emergency response, because even in our own staff and also our clients who are vulnerable, was how do we do emergency response for someone that may have lost a job and now can't even get food, right? So that quick responsiveness was something that everyone was grappling with and needed more, I would say, what we call grace, more emotional support, more interaction, right? So we actually implemented very quickly, because we're all trying to figure out how do we work remotely and how do we give employees support, went to weekly town hall meetings, and if necessary, even more frequently. But the town halls were a way to check in and were a way to share information and also, figure out like, okay, what do employees need in this moment? We gave time off, extra time off. We, in the summer last year, gave Fridays off, right? So that people could have more chance to recharge. And then in the middle of this, we had a racial reckoning. And what that did, I think, from a leadership style, because you mentioned that, is I was a leader, I was general counsel there, very buttoned up and, very serious. And, I'm responsible for risk and, and advising the company. We're all human. I broke down crying on one of our staff meetings, and we openly talked about the murder of George Floyd and the pain we all felt, and gave a lot of grace, right, in that moment, and during the entire year. So part of what COVID and the racial reckoning and the economic crisis has taught us is that in the end, we're all human. We all have to support each other. We have to give each other grace, and we have to have a lot of humility, because everybody is in a different place in their life. And being a good employer is about respecting that and giving the flexibility and resources and support so that all employees can thrive in a good environment, but in the worst environment as well.
I think so important, multiple things that you mentioned in there, really being focused on what other people need and want. And that transparent communication is vital. It was vital anyways, but I think that we didn't have an option over the last year, and it really forced us to change very quickly. Now, Dipti, I know that your company has really been remote this entire time. So can you tell us a little bit about what are the benefits or opportunities for leaders now that flexible and hybrid work are the norm, and how can they be using flexibility to support their employees, and specifically women and the people of color, as you've been kind of doing it for a little bit?
Yeah, so we've always been remote. This model that is prevalent today is basically what we started with. And back when we started, I think it was more out of necessity. Our team was overseas. We're a small company, we're a bootstrap company, and financially it didn't make sense to open up an office, you know? And so back then, Zoom and all those features did not exist. All these great tools that we have now didn't exist, but you know, somehow we made it. And what we realized is that this model really works for us. And again, it's because we are a small company. We have employees in, I think, almost every single time zone. So if you think about it, you know, if we didn't have this remote version that we live in today, how could we even function? I don't think it would be even possible. But with like so many wonderful synchronous and asynchronous tools out there, from Zoom to Loom to even us iorad, like this is how we get to function. There was another question in there. I'm sorry. There were tons of questions.
No, you're good. I think it's just giving us any advice. So as you have done it in your company, any advice for other folks that are starting to look at this flexible option?
Well, I think for us, the most important thing is ownership and flexibility. And what that means is, so we pride ourselves in being a permissionless company. And what that means for us is, we want you to run with it. You have an idea, we're small enough, you run with it, but you have to own that idea, you know? And that flexibility comes when you take ownership, you get to make your own schedule, you get to make your own day. And with these tools that we just talked about, you know, you can go and record what you have to, you can set up meetings. I mean, talking to Vietnam, you know, is not going to be possible for our West Coast guys if we lived in the traditional company. But with this new world, it is possible. And I think what happens is, today we get to do things that we didn't get to do yesterday. Like we get to open up the pool of employees globally. You don't have to stay locally anymore. And I think it works both ways, not just as an employer, but also as an employee. I mean, you get this job and then you have to pick up and leave your whole life, your family, your home, etc., for this job. Now, let's say, for example, it doesn't work out. That's a big investment on both our parts. Today, you get to figure it out, you know? We're all just figuring it out.
Yeah.
And I think as far as for me personally, I know as raising kids is something we all struggle with. Today, we get to see moms in real life, you know? And Betty talked about being, you know, proper and in her suit, but today we see moms look in their pajamas with kids running around because this is real life, you know, and you get to blend it all and you get to have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important, but again, it has to come from both sides. As an employer, you have to be conscientious of it and realize work is very important, but that is not life. There is also life. As far as, you know, diversity, I know that's a big thing. And I think for us, because we're a small company and my husband and I are persons of color, I guess, that have started this company, I think it just comes, it's kind of like, we're not looking for diversity in that traditional sense. I think what we're looking for is, you know, diverse experiences, diverse backgrounds, diverse ideas, because through diversity is how you get innovation.
Yeah.
And small companies, we're doing something innovative. You know, all companies are looking for innovation, but when you're a small company and you're bootstrapped, you're really
Yes.
looking for innovation.
Yes. You're looking for diversity in the definition of diversity, right? Like it's not this. So when you were speaking about flexibility, it's like all of that is, if you are not a flexible person right now, you are being truly developed. If you're not a flexible learning company, you are being shoved, because if you don't do it now, you will not exist. So I think those were great points. And both, it's been that, Kathleen, I'm coming to you now. It has been multiple times already mentioned, right? This is like this new insight and vulnerability that we're all showing, and that concept of boundaries. And it's good in some sense because we get to see each other and be like, oh, you have one, I have one too. Like I've got kids running around too. But in the other sense of, right, home became work, work became home, and those boundaries kind of faded away, and people felt like it was okay to call you at 10 p.m. You worked all day, all night because you were right there at your kitchen table. Tell us a little bit about that, and from your perspective as a leader, what advice, how has it impacted you, and then what advice do you give us out here in the workplace?
So I 1,000% feel that. I actually worked from my bedroom for the first. I have children as well, living in a small space in Boston. I had the harebrained scheme of working from my living room for the first 2 weeks, thinking it was going to be some temporary thing. And then I had it, and I demanded that we move. I didn't have a desk. Desks were sold out. That we move our dining room table into our bedroom. And my husband and I are taking our bedroom door off. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks into COVID, 10 minutes before a Zoom meeting, being like, I got to get separation from my family. But then it had me working from my bedroom every day, almost my desk staring me down. So we did a really great job of really bringing some structure to it, because I think we were very nebulous in the beginning, like plug in, get your work done, be autonomous, we trust you, get it done. And we have so much CRM to understand what our output is, that everyone's just like, take what you need. Then I think we really looked and said, people need direction. So we really built a lot more formality around how we can communicate, when you can Slack, how you can reach out, when it's appropriate to contact someone on a personal device, getting shutdown hours, building in mental health days that were mandatory every quarter. Also talking about building in time, calendar invites for walks, like really building in a lot of different things. We onboarded a couple of different platforms too, in terms of like meditation and self-care, wellness, and it also being a living, breathing thing. I think that's the biggest thing too. Betty spoke about that. We took so many different approaches. I think it was just establishing a feedback loop and understanding that this is just consistently changing, which is we'd never been doing before. A lot of time before, we had focused on employee health and wellness and making it pretty one size fits all. And what we really took a step back and realized that everyone needs to also just have that direct one-to-one with their manager of what they need, because everyone's needs were so vastly different. And I know too, for me, when I was a working parent with no childcare, my needs were totally different than someone who was, say, moving back in with family, caretaking, or doing a lot of other different things. So we really tried to make it less, sort of company-wide, and really making it autonomous and addressing everyone's needs. But I definitely too had just moments where I had to really shut it down and encourage others to do that too, just because you could just plug in, no commute. I would sometimes sit there and I would be in my pajamas with my coffee at 8 a.m., like already plugged in, and, not getting that, time to have a commute, or, although it's best not to commute, and it's great to have that eliminated sometimes, it's still very much so that was great downtime, and to also have that definitive space and that boundary between your work. So just sort of reimagining how to build that back in was really a big thing.
It's so important, right? The learning happens in reflection. And so in some cases, we've given up that reflection and slow down time of just, while none of us love being stuck in traffic, it kind of forced you to maybe listen to music, reflect, and say, oh, what's my plan? And so I think it's great points. Thank you for that, ladies. I'm going to move into flipping into a little bit of how this is impacting our employees. Also, all of what you said, of course, is doing that. But I think some of our employees are worried about, as we're moving into this remote work, hybrid work, this mentorship and promotions. And at WeWork, from a connection perspective, we use things like listening circles and town halls to ensure that all the employees have access to executives and that they're being heard. Can you talk a little bit about what you're focused on in your company? And I'll come to you first, Betty, on how do you keep that connection and how do you keep that mentorship going in your company?
Yeah, I mean, so where I am now, we're a very small team. We're 5, so we're connected all the time. So we have our weekly staff meeting. We have different meetings based on topical needs, but sometimes it's just picking up the phone, right, and saying, "Here's what I need right now." I having sort of, and I've been trying to do this more frequently, even in every call, like we do when in our staff meeting, we have a check-in. How's everybody doing? How's everyone feeling? But also one-on-one saying, what can I do to better support you? What do you need in this moment? And just, we all said it, the word flexibility is really important because everybody is in different phases and stages of their life, some dealing with kids, some not. The reality is if you are working from home and you have children, the caregiving piece is really a conundrum right now, right? So unless you had just, a magical nanny, you were performing multiple tasks, right, during the day. So the workday looks very, very different. Back at Compass, I want to say other ways to, to create that visibility, was we launched at that time sort of in response to employee feedback, and it was part of our DEI plan, was to launch affinity groups for our Latino staff and our African-American staff. And we did it based on what these individuals, but also what the groups wanted. So the Latinx affinity group wanted something a little bit different from the Black affinity group. And we adjusted, to what their needs were. But the beauty of it is that, affinity groups or employee resource groups should be driven by what the employees not want and should just have an executive sponsor, right? That could be supportive, provide the resources and capital they need to get the work done. And part of that is exposure. So in a larger company, right, is ensuring that those groups have exposure to senior leaders, not just from a mentorship and sponsorship perspective, but also from a resource perspective. And I think it's important to allow the rotation, right, to have individuals access these senior leaders, not just from a, hey, we're having a nice event, but more so like, here's the great work that I can do, right? Reimagining the types of projects, for example, that employees can take on. Sort of some companies do rotations in different departments. I'm such a fan of that model. And I'll tell you, I'm a lawyer by training. I've been a corporate lawyer, but an in-house counsel as well. And I almost think that's sort of the best job ever because you're like the fly on the wall. You have to know everything. You have to understand the business. You know where all the secrets are. You know everything about it, right? So that you can be a good advisor and an effective one. I almost wish that experience could be given to every employee because that's what creates this feeling and sense of ownership that I can contribute, right, to this larger picture. I just don't do my day-to-day job, but I'm doing my job as part of a larger goal, mission, strategy. And I think that sense of, ownership, accountability, but agency, right, is really key to give to employees. It will look different in every company, but I think if we think of it that way as leaders, as managers and supervisors, right, how can I teach this person the business rather than just their task or their responsibilities day to day, you're going to have for a much better employee experience. And it will feel then like you're developing employees to reach their full potential.
Yeah, I think that's great. You're teaching people how to fish, right? Versus fishing for them in that and seeing them and really empowering them and making sure that they feel like they have purpose. So I think that's really important. Now, Kathleen, I know that Teads just returned back to office. And one of the big challenges in this new world that we live in is bringing people back and onboarding them and bringing them and teaching them your culture, right? And getting everybody kind of pulled into the fold. Give us a couple of tactics or, any advice that you guys are doing right now.
Yeah, so we're returning to office. We actually consistently do surveys, and it was a resounding yes that people wanted to start really embracing the hybrid model and getting back in the office. We're growing exponentially, so there's been hundreds of new people hired. So there is an unbelievable amount of resources to be able to do that virtually, but there's just something you can't put in that personal connection. And we largely are too just a client development business, a lot of in person, whether that's either in our own office or meeting with our partners, whether they be our publishers or our advertising partners. So we really are a socially driven business as well, and really thrive off of really getting that in-person connection. So what we're doing is fully embracing, we're getting back to office. We proudly have been back at our WeWork actually in Boston for a number of months because we had new people start in Boston, and we really are loving leveraging that space. I think our biggest piece of advice is just understanding that that's not just where work happens anymore, and using the office as a tool, not using it as the only place as we solely used to focus on. And, not just at my company, historically, everywhere in business. So really using it as a tool. So our pieces of advice are really focusing on, your more single stream workflow, do those on the days that you're home. We really want to get everyone in office interacting, putting value and making the connections too. I think sometimes, grabbing that coffee or grabbing that lunch or things like that weren't necessarily seen as productive. I think we're seeing that in a different light now. That's extremely productive. So leveraging those days in office to really build interconnectivity, team bonding, really getting to know people. I think that's how we're going to be leveraging the office space, and it just being part of our portfolio of tools is how we conduct business moving forward. But we're all really excited. And as I said, our Boston team has been back for a while, and we truly we're thriving because we've been able to build such a great rapport together that started on the back of a digital connection, but then now we've been able to really put it together in person. So we're really excited to be back. And I know our new hires too, they're just extremely excited to start building that connection and learn more quickly too. I think sometimes virtually you have to chase people down, Slack them, email them, find the answers, go on databases, look at training tools, find videos, those sorts of things, but which are extremely, extremely impactful. But sometimes there's nothing better than just going over to someone's desk or hollering over the office and being able to find out something, or just some of that also as they speak, the water cooler talk, I know that's not really any longer, but there's a lot of that we still miss. And so I think we're all really excited.
Yeah. Well, and WeWork, the common area kitchen counter talk absolutely happens all the time. I see it happening. And I love the fact that you're using the space as a tool to help you build culture and make sure people feel like they belong, which I think is fantastic. So I'm going to try to be a woman to my word. I know I have 2 minutes. And so we're going to hit everyone. I'm going to start with you, Dipti, up in my top right corner. What's one piece of advice that you would give these folks out here listening to us right now? Going forward in the future, what's one piece of advice you would give them?
I think it's stay authentic. The rules have changed. Do what you have to do. Knowledge is out there. It's everywhere. Nobody is the expert anymore. Be flexible. And if you want something, go get it. Make it happen. You don't have to sit there and wait. You're in charge of yourself.
Love that. Love, 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 love that. I am a career coach also. And that I underline, score, all of that. Thank you. Thank you. Kathleen?
I know it's an overused word, but I think bring empathy into everything that you do, whether it be internally but with yourself as well, and with your fellow colleagues, everyone you interact with, having a lot more self-love too. I think we're extremely critical of ourselves, especially during this time period. I don't think we've all even really wrapped our head around what we've all been through. So I think instilling that in yourself every day. And then also, I think it's really democratized, as what Dipti just said, business. Access is never been more out there. I think get time with people, be bold, ask for what you want and find out more and just really go after it, as Dipti said, because, if we've been through this, I also say, what can't we do? If we survived all of this and thrived in a business and thrived personally, really, what can you not do? I don't think there's something that's been much harder. So
yeah, I think that's great. And I really hope that we keep people right? Like we'll forget as we move past. I really hope that empathy, to your point, really stays at the forefront, because I think it's really important. And then Betty, you're going to bring us home.
Yeah, so this is my inner advocate, right? So this is the time to get really, really disruptive, to create the types of workplaces and workspaces that you want in the future, now and in the future. So it's not just ask what you want, but look to transform cultures so that they are adapted to what you need and what others need, because not just about one individual, but about the entire business. So part of the time that we're in is, yes, you can ask, but probably a lot of other people need the same thing. So come together, use collaboration. I don't want to encourage striking, but honestly, like, part of this time is work. This is going to be the year of the worker, because it is the opportunity to ask for what you want. You're going to get it, because we're in a labor shortage, right? Employers are really being pushed to create different working conditions that are places, to create places where employees can truly thrive, not just from a culture and workspace standpoint, but also from a compensation standpoint, from a benefit standpoint, from a work-life perspective. That's critical to creating a new type of economy where we can actually thrive in. And then the last thing that I'll say is that if we can't change where we work, create your own space. This is the time, right, to explore entrepreneurship, to do your own thing, take your side hustle and make it your main hustle. I think that there's no better time to say, I'm going to rethink what my passions are, and I'm going to go for that, and I'm going to create a new model that is responsive to the way I want to see a workplace become. Yeah. So let's not forget that we can also create what we want. We don't have to be stuck with the existing structures.
Yes, that's fantastic. I have a bracelet on that sees the day. That is basically like, you literally advocate for others. Like, don't wait, do it. Do your side hustle because you love it. That's why it's a side hustle. So like, create your own and make it happen, because I do believe that it is the time for the employee to really make sure that we are doing and demanding. So I appreciate you guys spending this time. You ladies did not disappoint. I knew these were strong women in Boston. And I love spending the time with you. Dipti, Kathleen, and Betty, thank you for your time and your advice. And everyone out there, we hope that you have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.